forward?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. It's there's always ongoing um, um, ac activism going on in a lot of different venues, and much of it isn't spoken about. I know that there's a good friend of mine out in New York, Betty Lyons, who works for the Indian Law Alliance, and they're always lobbying over at the United Nations to change legislation and to bring forward the issues. And another good friend of mine, Dr. Martin Hill, is working in Canada with the water issue. And I'm helping her with that. We're creating a little VR, like an interactive thing that they put on their eyes, and they get to watch how water, the main source to life, is being so exploited and polluted, and how precious that is. So I know that she's fighting locally, the provincial and Canadian government, to have their water rights protected. So there's a lot of issues around water, as you know, with Standing Rock and everything else that's going on with pipelines and with fracking. And there's always movement across the country in different ways. I can't speak to one specifically, but I just know I get pulled into a lot of different areas, and some of it's jurisdiction. Does the federal government actually have jurisdiction over Indian lands? And the Mcgrath case that just happened in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of spin-offs from that decision. So I think it's really important to be aware, be involved, and now that we have Debbie Holland in the interior, I think that is a big move in terms of having visibility for Indigenous women and our many issues but it's really difficult sometimes to move forward when you're still dealing with the trauma from the past, and a lot of our young women and our young mothers getting eaten up in the big systemic machine, the big predator machine that sometimes incarcerates our women, or removes from them their parental rights. There's a lot of issues, and I don't even know where to begin because the plate is pretty full. But I think generally, any support to Indigenous issues, whether legislatively, fiscally, or just a high five, goes a long way to keep the momentum going.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm not sure that everybody knows what was the Mcgrath case. Could you tell us a little more?
Oh, well, that's where the federal government in its failings failed to follow its own process. And so half of the state of Oklahoma is reverting back to Indian title, basically, in a short sentence. So I think it's really important that, and it came up as a murder case, and they were trying to decide jurisdiction, who had jurisdiction, the state or the federal government. And when it actually went to court, they found out that the federal government didn't even own the state of Oklahoma. It still was in the actual ownership and titleship of the Native people that are there. So now they're trying to, so Oklahoma almost ceased to exist as a state. So for me, that's the level of policy and justice that needs to surface. And so it's a rare win for Indigenous people in a system that doesn't represent them. So, but the law has to follow.
And I haven't heard anything about that.
Oh, well, there you go. So again, censorship.
Exactly. They don't want us to know,
Mm-hmm.
and even come to even make a stand about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy. So what what do you think when you hear the word reparations? And Junie, I welcome your thoughts as well, you know.
I'll let Junie go first on that.
We like to say rematriation.
Mhm.
That's been a big buzzword with among the women in our community, and you know, with the new online magazine too, it's called Rematriation. And if you look at most of our a lot of Native cultures are matrilineal, so that's the way it's supposed to go through, is the women's line. But because of, you know, Western influence and colonialism, we have the word repatriation, give everything to the men. But that's not really where it's at. So I'll let Louise talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in a matri-centered, matri-focused society, as Gajitun and I live in, you know, women are at the center of the representation of our community. So all things that are sacred belong to the mother. So when we talk about rematriation, it's a returning the sacred to the mother. So, you know, any artifacts that like our wampum belts or our false faces or our beadwork or our treaties, anything has to be endorsed by the women of our community. And if it's a man only deal, then it's null and void. So the women have a huge voice politically, with the justice. They have the right to call for war, to call for peace. They have the right of nomination to choose our leaders. They also have the right of recall. They can depose our leaders when they're acting up. And the status of our children follow the mother. So they're being in a matri-centered, mother-focused society, women have a whole lot of influence. So for me, I think rematriation is the understanding that all things that are sacred belong to the mother, as we know that our earth mother is also female, and that, you know, our precious air, our precious earth, our precious waters all belong to the mother. So I mean, I can go off on a huge tangent on that, but I know we got limited amount of time. But I despise the word patriarchy or repatriation. So for me, it's like return the sacredness to the breast of our mothers, so that they can be held most sacredly and most in a holy way. And if we can achieve that, then our children will be well, and then our men will have no choice but to fall in line. So for me, it's really important for mothers to be well in our community.
Thank you for that. That actually brings tears to my eyes.
Thank you.
Mama Bear, I had a question for you. I was wondering if you could expand upon the saying that your grandmother would say to you, that we are not feminists, we are the law. And I'm sure that holding that tradition throughout these years has been a lot to bear. So I was wondering if you could expand upon that for us.
Oh, absolutely. You know, some of the rhetoric that I hear in some of the circles that I move, you know, whenever a woman raises her voice or renders an opinion, we're called feminists. And I remember sitting on that stage in New York. Remember that, Junie? You know, I'm sitting with oh man, I just had a blank out. Gloria Steinem, and you know, all these important women, and I felt so out of place. You know, they're talking about women's lib, and they're talking about burning their bras, and they're talking about feminism and all this voting stuff that was going on. And I'm like, that's not my story. That's not my narrative. That's not my experience. And you know, I just had a moment there where I was like, I don't know, maybe I was starstruck or something, but I froze, and I'm like, oh God, what am I going to say? And so I recognized right away that I had to separate myself from their story, because I wasn't part of the story. And because that wasn't my experience, nor my mother's or my grandmother's, because we were still in the trenches on the reserve being relocated. Our grandmothers were just coming back from residential school. You know, they were sterilizing our women. there was just a whole different universe for Indigenous women compared to what Sally and Gloria were talking about. Even Black women had a whole different experience. So, you know, I had to go back to what I know and to be authentically true to the women that came before me. I understand the history. And when our peacemaker established the Great Law of Peace to bring 5 bloodshedding, warring nations together, he rendered on to our mother of nations called Jagusize. And he said, from this day forward, you will have title to the land, and the children will follow you, will follow your clan. So and you have the right to choose the leader. So a man can't become a leader until a woman puts him there. So there's this whole history that I understood. And because the earth is a woman, and because of our own creation story of Sky Woman, who came from a celestial opening in the sky world, and she traveled here and became pregnant and arrived here and created the earth, to me, that was already set in motion based upon precedents, what came first. And in our stories, a woman came first. So she primordially set in motion the standard of law, because she came first. It wasn't a man who came first, it was a woman. So I went back to that story and said, well, we're not feminists, we're the law. So when you begin to understand that you are the law, and because we have that incredible power to bring forth life in the continuity of the generations, and the power to generate the energy in a community and in a family, you know, we set the standard. We're the weather vane to how society is. And so if we're sick, then society is sick. That's why, you know, this movie is a real powerful tool to reassert the authority of women throughout the landscape. And that's why I said we are the law. So I hope I answered your question, because I believe we truly are. Because, you know, what does it go back to? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, in our story, it's clear. It was the woman, and she gave birth to a daughter who gave birth to the first male twins, who created everything on the earth. But even our creator has a mother, and he's accountable to her. And the women weren't left out of our stories. They weren't left out of our governance. They had political voice. They had their hands on the national treasury. They had control of their sexuality. You know, they determined how many babies were going to be born in our society. So it was an all mother-centered society, and we were the law. And that's basically, you know, fell out of the sky and hit me in the head and popped out of my mouth on that stage. So, and luckily, Gudgy Juni caught it on film. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. I'm glad that Gudgy Juni was able to capture that, because that moment very, very much resonated with me.
Yeah.
And going off of, you know, what you were saying, just thinking of our conceptions of this creation story and the difference between the Native idea or the Native understanding and that Western idea of woman coming from the rib of man. How do you think that has, I mean, it is somewhat obvious the way it has affected our society, but that just that concept of ownership over being and of story, how do you perceive we remedy that?
Quit taking your husband's last name.
Yes.
Always.
You know, stand in your own truth, stand in your own power. You know, you don't have to stand in somebody else's light in order to shine. I often tell my daughters, you know, you're your own given, sovereign, autonomous, living being. You don't need anybody to shed light on you. You're already illuminated. You're already glowing. You don't need a man's last name in order to be validated in the world. So I think that would be a great beginning among many other things that we should be able to do. But I'm just saying, when I got married, I didn't take my husband's last name, though I use it now and again because that's the world we live in, right? And then I recognized, but I have my father's last name. So do I go back to my mother's last name who took her father's last name? So it just creates a long chain, right? And then I thought, okay, that's it. So here in our community, we have a mom who fought the Canadian government and won to only name our children only the one name, our only Mohawk name. And so I have a granddaughter that we registered with only one name, and it's her Mohawk name. So I'm going to follow suit as an adult woman and get rid of both of my last names and just have my one name. Madonna and Cher can do it. I can do it too.
Oh, amazing. And that is just reminding me of another quote from the film that Sally Wagner had said in admiration of you, that you have a right to be in this world. And I think that power that you have, that energy that you put out is something very important that we do need to teach our young women in this world. And I thank you for all that.
Thank you. Are you ready for a revolution?
Oh, I'm so ready for revolution. Put it upside down. We need to reverse the reversal.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a few more questions, but I was wondering if there are any other questions through the chat or through any raised hands, Holly, or anything like that.
I am not seeing any raised hands, but maybe people just need a little encouragement.
Well, I'll ask one more question and then we'll encourage people to think of what else. This is a very rare opportunity for us to learn more. And I very much appreciate it. So I'll ask this one question, which is nationally, the US has been struggling to deal with who is depicted on statues and monuments. And here today, we are challenging the historical record about the very concepts we believe. What do you think about that situation? And what do you think is the harm that results from being absent from the national narrative?
Do you want me to take that, Junie, or you want to go?
You can start.
Well, for me, I don't think we're absent. I think we are erased. And that's a big difference there. It's not like it's when you look at history books, it's like we're extinct, like we're we left with the dinosaurs, right? So but we do have a presence, but we're censored. We're talk about cancel culture. They don't want to deal with the indigenous story because it's a shameful one for the United States. And it's their own karmic debt, I have to say, that they don't want to owe up to. And it's really never going to be right until they do. So until we begin to, see people in power grow some, pretty big ideas, and to reach moments of humbleness on behalf of their ancestors, and to not only apologize, but to right the wrongs on behalf of their ancestors. It'll always be in turmoil. Like even, you want to look at Washington, D.C. and the Capitol building, and who knows that there's a woman on top of the Capitol building, and who knows that she's intertwined with an indigenous woman's essence. Nobody knows who she is. And we look at the Capitol building on CNN every night, but there's this woman essence, but she's silent. So when a woman is silent, there's incredible violence. And look at what's going on to women all across, and our children all across the landscape. So, you know, we got to be really careful about the statues that get erected. Like, we have to, if it's a woman, we as women have to control that narrative. And it shouldn't belong to, you know, political committees or, you know, some guy who's on his egotistical agenda to become famous, you know. But I believe that the United States suffers mother loss. So in their constitution, women are not in it. You can't birth a nation without a mother. You know, men can't birth babies. So for me, the United States suffers because they dismiss their women and their mothers. But then they take this statue because she represents, you know, regeneration, but they put her on top of the Capitol building with no true narrative. And even if you look at Lady Liberty and other statues across the country, you know, they're kind of hidden histories, and they're kind of there, but they're silent. So what do we do to change that? We control the narrative. Good, Junie?
I agree, like with that, and especially like as being an educator, I think we need to do this in the history books, and it doesn't seem to be changing. Like, I've been teaching for 20 years, and the history books still look pretty much the same. So now I got to make movies so people can get some of the history. So it's something that's really, really needed. We need to acknowledge everybody that's here, and especially the indigenous people. They're pretty invisible. And in media, we're really invisible. Like, if you look on TV or you look in movies, you rarely see Native people. And if you do, they might be in the past, or they might be stereotyped. So it's time to get more of our stories out there and to become more visible, because we have a lot of important things to say. And while I'm on here, I just want to say hi to Kay, because I see Kay on there and I just miss her so much. Kay Olin.
Hey,
Okay.
our sister Kay. We have a Wolfie on. And Fallon, who's from our community, is also with us. So I go Fallon.
Okay.
But anyways, you know, I just want to add to what Gajachuni said is, you know, you can't find a better first person point of view voice than other than Gajachuni, because it's not Hollywood here, you know. This is the real authentic voice that you're ever going to get to hear from. And I often say to the audiences that I talk to, you're in privileged space, because according to US government and Canadian policy, we should have been exterminated 150 years ago. But we're still here. We're still here. And the fact that we're still here is an absolute testament to our tenacity and to our resilience to be able to overcome laws of termination. Because everybody knows residential school, it was about, you know, killing the Indian but keeping the man. So, you know, consider yourself lucky tonight that you're speaking to authentically real Indigenous women, and we're not in the past, we're very present, and we are very much on the move, and we are coming. We're going to keep on coming, and look out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Question, if possible.
There, Carol, do you have a question? You're muted, Carol.
Unmute. There, am I okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to first of all commend you on a fabulous film. I watched it 3 times today, and I'm going to keep watching it, and I'm curious to watch the other ones as well. It's just so edifying. I'm very curious. It sounds like you, both of the speakers, the main speakers, are from the Northwestern tribes. Wondering if the Southwestern or most of the Native American tribes, were they a matriarchal society? I'm particularly interested in Arizona and New Mexico. and those areas, did they also have a very strong mayorarchy, I'm saying it wrong, mayorarchical base?
Yeah. It's we're northeastern, Haudenosaunee in particular, and what I wanted to say on that is just that there are over 500 different nations with a lot of different languages and different cultures and songs, and but a lot of them were matrilineal, so following the mother's line. And I think like religion and colonialism has changed a lot of that for a lot of nations, because I do a lot of traveling. And I'll just give an example. I was visiting my friends that live in the pueblos in New Mexico, and they were a matrilineal nation, and now have gone to adopt, like they have governors, which are all male. I think they might have only had one female, all the rest are male. And that was the influence of the Spanish. So a lot of different nations were influenced in that way. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you like the films.
Kay has her hand up. Kay, would you like to unmute?
Sego. I just want, I hope it's okay for me to just mention that there's a monument in Plattsburgh of Samuel D. Champlain, and a group of local people in Plattsburgh got together to discuss whether or not that statue should stay there. I won't go into right now why, but if you can read about it online and see an image of it. And what happened was a committee of people was put together of Native and non-Native people. And they met with local people to get everybody's points of view. And I think early on they decided that it probably was taking the statue down wasn't going to make for peaceful relations between people in the area. It would probably cause a lot of strife and division. And so they decided after discussion to put up an educational panel about what was inaccurate about that depiction of not only Samuel D. Champlain, but also a Native man that's part of that monument. And they, instead of taking it down, decided it was a teachable moment, and that they could have teach people about that time in history and what actually happened, and what the relations really were at that time between Native and non-Native people, and get people to start questioning themselves about, why that statue was put there. And then they got permission from the local people, from the local government, to put up that educational panel. And you can imagine there was a lot of discussion about the wording in the panel. And then they didn't stop there. They said, well, what else can we do? Can we also put up, we've got this European person depicted. Why can't we have a monument depicting a Native person? So they started thinking about that, and that's in the works. And they're also thinking about putting a garden in and more informational panels. And so it's opened this door to communication, to sharing, to putting together pieces of the puzzle so that people can decide for themselves what really happened historically, and realize that we're still here today and willing to talk about it. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in as one example of what's going on today in terms of monuments. And then, but my real question was, Junie, what's your next project?
Well, Nyawanke for mentioning that. I've forgotten all about that. I was sitting on that committee for a while, and it's cool that they're doing that in Plattsburgh, and we need to do that in more places. And replace a lot of those state historic markers that are accurate too, or put something next to them. But yeah, my next film project, I've been writing grants, and I've already actually started production even before I get the money because I got the pull to do it. But I'm going to be doing a feature-length film on it's going to be called Ganaue, Original Seeds. So I'm going to be following 3 Indigenous women seed keepers of different ages. So grandmother Florida Mayo was one of the 13 grandmothers, and she's a seed keeper. She's Mayan and she lives in New Mexico. And then Rowan White, who is from our community but lives in California, is also a seed keeper that's a little younger than me that has teenage kids. She's been doing this work for 25 years. And then the younger person that I'm following is in our community. Her name is Onwea Awi, and she is 19 years old and already a seed keeper. So telling that story of keeping our original heirloom seeds and the importance of continuing to pass those on, what's been passed on to us, and like having more sustainable agriculture and is healthy for everybody. So that's the project for my next film, and I'm really excited about it.
Are there any more questions?
I kind of just want to go back to the statue topic, and y'all for that. Okay, Sego. She just jolted my memory. I was part of a committee that, and this is directly related to the film that Junie made with Matilda Jocelyn Gage, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I forgot the other girl's name. But anyways, they're making these statues at Seneca Falls, where they say it's a birthplace of feminism, and it's called The Ripples of Change, where apparently that's where Haudenosaunee women greatly influenced those early suffragettes. And as part of changing the narrative, we put a Haudenosaunee committee together, comprised of Michelle Shenandoah and her mom, Diane Shenandoah, who's a sculptor, and she worked with another sculptor. But those statues, I think, are going to be revealed before the end of this year. And they have Harriet Tubman on there. They have Matilda Jocelyn Gage, and those 3 original women. Lucretia Mott, I believe, is the 3rd one. So, but they're standing together. Then there's Harriet Tubman, and then there's a Haudenosaunee woman called Laura Kellogg Cornelius, who was very influential at the turn of the century, latter 1800s to the early 1900s. And she's going to be depicted holding a wampum belt, talking to the colonial women about being a matriline society. And I like to use the matriline over matriarch because I get the feeling that matriarch implies that there's a queen, but in a matriline society, every woman is a queen. So for me, matrilineal and matriline is much more my jive in terms of defining who we are as Haudenosaunee. And it's more of a mother society versus a queen society. So I just wanted to pipe in and add that because Kay reminded me about that work, and there's other work. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention real quick is I was part of a committee, and now that Trump is out, they're getting their committee back together again. But the US $20 bill is going to have a new face on it, and they're moving toward putting Harriet Tubman on it versus Andrew Jackson. And they're on the back side of that $20 bill is going to be the Haudenosaunee Women's Nomination Belt. So that's in the works. I don't know if it's going to materialize sooner or later, but it's churning in the pot. It's percolating somewhere on the stove. So just to let you know, that could be a change in the currency. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that stuff. But I often tell young people, America is a culture of death because they celebrate dead white guys. So where Haudenosaunee life is all about celebrating life, and that's why we have our Thanksgiving address, and we give thanks to everything that's tangible that we see, breathe, touch here on earth, all the way from the people to the earth, to the waters, to the fish, the trees, the thunder, the winds, the sun, the moon, the stars, and to our creator. So for me, it's very different worldviews. But anyways, I talk a lot, so I'm going to be quiet now.
You don't talk a lot. I mean, you talk a lot, and that's okay. It's lovely. Every story you share, I love. Fallon wrote, I just wanted to share this. Fallon wrote, I hope am I saying your name correctly? I have no questions. I'm just glad to be here in this space. I've already cried and then stood up in applause within 10 minutes. And then she wrote, thank you to everyone. And I would like somebody to tell me how to say thank you. It looks like Nyawan. So thank you, Fallon.
Yeah, Nyao means thank you. Nyao, Fallon. Ganukwa.
Well, I think we have filled our hour completely, fully. I am so grateful to you both for the work that you're doing and for being here with us, and the powerful work that you are doing to save the world. Honestly, I feel like we are on the wrong path, and it's time for us to turn back. And I hope that we can accomplish that. And I just thank you so much for being here with us. And I thank everyone for coming and joining us. I hope that you will share some of the things that you learned tonight. I hope that we will become a nation of mothers and no queens. So thank you all so much. And if you'd like any more news about MLK, anything that's happening, sign up, get on our mailing lists, and become a member. We're reforming. Wouldn't it be fun to plan out some more of these things your own self, things you'd like to learn about, things you'd like to do, joy and celebration of who we are. So anyway, I hope to see you all again someday soon.
Yes, I echo all of Jean's thanks. And I want to, everyone, the film is available. We have access to the film if you'd like to, if you haven't seen it or you'd like to view it again, and let friends know about it.
Yes.
It's available through Saturday, I believe, until midnight. It turns into a pumpkin. And then we have the woman, I'm blanking on her name, Sally, the
Roche Wagner.
She's actually doing an event for the League of Women Voters next week. So that is on our calendar, MLK Saratoga calendar. We also have some other events coming up. Tomorrow night is a Dance for the Planet to celebrate the Earth. It's a virtual dance party. It's really good for the soul. I encourage everyone to attend that. And then the launch of MLK Saratoga has a new project called Our Story. And it's about, Jean, do you want to say a little bit about that? Just because you've been involved with that as well.
Well, it's really just finding places, local history, physical locations that when you go there, they open up a whole story that is also unwritten. And it's trying to find our local treasures and encouraging people to talk to their grandparents and their aunties and their uncles, and find out where their story fits into the larger narrative. So it's lots of fun.
Right, and it's a beginning. We have all sorts of ideas to expand that program, and I like the story that Kay shared about that the statue or monument that instead of replacing it, they used it as an educational moment, and it's expanded and turned into something bigger. And I think that's how we're thinking about this new venture. So all that information is on our website, mlksaratoga.org. So I think that's a wrap. So thank you so much, everyone, especially.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and look forward to seeing more from you.
Yes. Very soon.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thank you.
It's been an honor.
good night.
Good night.
Hey, thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good.
Happy Earth Day.
Okay.
Happy
Why not?
Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth
Love
Day.
our mother.
Here's our mother.
People get off a lot faster than they get on. It's kind of amazing.
Awesome. Awesome. It looks like it's just us and
No,
actually, that's my friend Peg.
Oh, that's your friend. Okay.
Yeah. Although I don't see your picture anymore. She was there earlier. Yeah. Anyway. So I think it went awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That was really very lovely.
That was,
Very
yeah.
lovely.
Oh, the
Oh,
things
I
about.
was so I was so nervous in the beginning too. I know it was so short when going through like the logistics things, but oh my God, wow, it's such an honor to like actually